give more returns. Get more security and more interest on your fixed deposits from Sri Lanka's largest finance company, LMDtv Finance.
The key to quality and efficiency. Be a jewel. Professionalism is the jewel in the corporate crown.
Refresh Sri Lanka for a civic-minded society in association with 99X. LMD, the voice of business.
Hello and welcome to LMDtv. Tonight on the forum, we're going to talk about banking and the SME sector. And with us, we have the Deputy General Manager of Retail and SME Banking at Hatton National Bank, Sanjay Wijemanne. It's very nice to have you on the show, Sanjay.
Thank you very much for having me. A pleasure to be here.
To start off our discussion, in your experience, what are the main obstacles that SME entrepreneurs in Sri Lanka have to face today?
Yeah, so extremely important question, and I think very timely as well. I think this has probably been the toughest period for any company, let alone SME or a microfinance unit. So they've gone through possibly all the challenges that a company can go through. I think the worst would be the high interest rates, really being a huge burden to companies. I think last year around April, if the rates were around 12, 13, it kind of peaked at about almost 28 to 30%. So that was a huge factor for companies. The second one, of course, was the exchange rate movement also. People generally like to operate in a stable environment where the currency or the exchange conversions is at a fairly stable level or moves within a fixed kind of period. But this fluctuation was far too much for companies to manage. And third, that then along with inflation made all the cost of running a business, almost double or treble. Your electricity costs, your transport costs, everything else skyrocketing. And then with that inflation pressure, whatever sort of company's output or whatever your marketing, also the demand came down because people's affordability to buy the different things that are being produced obviously went away. So multiple different situations that most companies has to grapple with. And we are still not out of it, but certainly from sort of the last 1 year period, I would think that the last 2-3 months has been somewhat better. And we are seeing a little bit more positivity as we go along.
And Sanjay, from the challenges that you listed, which ones need the most urgent solutions if you were to rate them on urgency?
Yeah, so definitely getting the interest rates to a manageable level is the number one priority. And I think the central bank, along with the banks, realize that that is definitely the way forward. We need to get that under control, allow people to start, doing their business, allow them to start getting the economy back on track. So both along with the central bank and the major banks all working together, we managed to kind of bring the interest rates down from, again, if you look at what we were in, say, last December at a 25 to 30% rate, to now a 15-16% rate on deposits, and certain banks like us even coming down to 11-12% on the deposit rate. And we now see the AWPLR also coming down gradually, and we expect the interest rates for lending to be around 15-16% in the next 2-3 months, which will be a huge benefit to all the companies. And then along with that, again, post the announcement of the debt restructuring that is expected one of these days, again, will support the stabilization of the exchange rate also to a certain degree. That also will help people to plan better, to understand in terms of buying or selling or importing or exporting, that you have stability in the exchange rate as well. So those two, I think, are crucial for any company to manage in this situation.
We know that 80% or more of Sri Lankan businesses fall under micro SMEs, and they account for a significant proportion of our GDP and our jobs, but often don't really have enough access to funding and other financial services. How serious is the situation today against the backdrop of this crisis?
Yeah, certainly. I think, as you correctly mentioned, the last 12 months certainly has been a challenge, because even for them, if you look at taking a loan, be it short term or long term, and then you have to, factor in a 25 to 30% interest rate, it almost becomes impossible for them to run a business. So I think the management of the companies, be it small or big, even if as an individual, they've realized that and kind of been cautious in terms of either expansion or looking at working capital. So they have kind of controlled their business functionality and what they can do in light of the rates. So essentially, what as a company, what people need to look at in the MSME segment is, take a very good look at your business, understand your costs, understand your distribution channels, understand maybe your retail stores. Take a very good look at how you operate. Is it a cash, sort of operation, or are you more digital now? So that study needs to be done, and I'm sure most companies have done so in the last 12 months, because they, as I mentioned, every single factor had changed in the way they operate. So it was almost, made to sort of a crucial point where each one had to look at every single penny in the business to understand, where they're spending it, your input to a business, your staff costs, everything had to be looked at in greater detail. And I think the changes that, MSMEs need to do are to, kind of transition now from being sort of maybe slightly disorganized, in way of operating, to have their financials nicely laid out, to try and put all their revenue and turnover into the bank, so that people can then study them better for credit, and look at a lot of the changes in terms of how companies are operating in sort of a digital scenario now. Even if you look at an example of point of sale machine, how companies accept credit card payments. I mean, from a terminal that is in your retail store, to a mobile POS now, to a web-based collection of payments. So all the sophistication is available in the market. It is now up to the MSMEs, to look at these options and to take part in some of these changes that are happening, and to look at completely restructuring, remodeling, and really being there with the sort of the market and the changes that are taking place.
Now let's talk about the solutions part of it, talking about the facilitators. How should the banking and financial services industry really support SMEs and MSMEs to really survive and thrive in today's economy?
Yeah, so the banks play a crucial part, as you mentioned. I think the biggest change or the value addition we need to do is to understand each one of those customers, be it a microfinance customer, a small business, not sort of sitting at head office level or a branch level and doing a usual evaluation, but really going to the customer's venue and in detail, understanding the impacts that each business has had. And, in this scenario, there are some businesses that are doing absolutely well because, there has been a demand for the products they create. But some of the other businesses, say tourism or maybe even connected parties to tourism, have taken a huge sort of backdrop in their numbers. So it is important that the banks understand and engage with the customers and not look at it as a one-size-fits-all solution. It has to be a tailor-made individual solution, again, be it microfinance or SME, that we try to cater to a customer's requirements. So even if you look at restructuring, reorganizing some of their borrowings that they have, you need to cater to what is possible for them to pay, say, in the next 6 months. What is their turnover? What is their potential in the next 6 months? Then what can they do 6 months after? So that understanding and working together with them rather than taking a sort of view saying, okay, this is how we are going to restructure, you have to pay it back in 2-3 years. That is not going to work. You have to understand each business, and they have to work with us also by divulging the turnover, divulging their numbers, so that it makes it easier for us to work together to give a common solution for them. And like I mentioned before, again, the banks also have to play an advising role in terms of the digitization I mentioned, supporting them in terms of some of those solutions we have, trying to help them to be, cashless or reduce the sort of the burden on, taking a cash-heavy business. Those changes need to be really done in collaboration with our customers, and therefore the need for engagement and on-the-ground activity by the financial institutions, the banks, and their teams is extremely important, because you cannot sit in a branch or at a head office and look at this business and give solutions. You have to be on the ground, understanding every customer as an individual or as a company, and provide solutions.
The Central Bank of Sri Lanka requested banks and financial corporations to really help restructure loans of SMEs, those who are facing difficulties. Yet how practical and how sustainable is this for banks? Because banks are operating in the crisis as well.
Yeah, so I quite agree. I think obviously, we had to have our liquidity levels. We had to be able to support customers continuously. And therefore, again, if you take it in maybe a few stages, so maybe no sooner sort of COVID was sort of 100% around the island with the lockdowns, that is the time that, there was absolutely not much happening. And that's when we had to really support our customers and provide moratoriums, low-cost working capital solutions. And that was probably the peak of where we had like very serious issues. And therefore, the liquidity or the money coming in terms of repayments was extremely slow. So that period, the banks also really looked at, cash flows, and plan so much better to be able to get through that period. So then if you take, say, 6 months after, or even maybe in 2023, the situation has improved drastically. So businesses have slowly started coming back into, certain degree of operation. You see the turnover coming in, them sort of working with us now to reschedule and be comfortable with the repayment structure. So I would think now in this present scenario, if you look at, say, the moratorium figure at the height of the issues, probably about 20% of our portfolio was on moratorium. But now when you look at it, it's less than 3-4% that, are really struggling. And those are mainly in the tourism sector, the people who are really still not out of the woods. But the rest of the businesses, I must say, have started coming back into some sort of normalcy and working with us in terms of making those payments. So again, it is how close you are to the customer, understanding that requirement, and being able to then work on a joint plan that then works for both the bank and the customer. So it can't be a one-way street. It has to be a good understanding arrangement that you have during this time. And the banks are very careful regarding cash flows and liquidity. If you look at it right now, I mean, HNB is flushed with money in terms of managing our liquidity. And so we are ready to support this sector now, because now's the time that the country needs to take off. And both SMEs and microfinance customers will play a big role in the future of how the country grows.
It's time to take a short break. When we return, we'll resume our conversation around banking and the SME sector.
Display your brand message on digital screens at prime locations. The largest digital advertising network in Sri Lanka. Emerging Media.
You're mobile, and so are we.
Gets me going.
Grab the Lite 87 app at the Apple App Store or Google Play now.
87.8 and 87.6 island-wide. Lite 87.
Welcome back to the show. We're talking to the Deputy General Manager of Retail and SME Banking at HNB, Sanjay Wijemanne. Sanjay, you spoke of some sectors starting to take off. Just out of curiosity, have you seen a lot of new businesses emerging in the SME and MSME sector?
Actually, there's a lot of new sort of businesses coming in. You see new people coming, especially on the agriculture side. People have realized that there's a lot of potential in that area, a lot of support. So you see a lot more people now starting to cultivate, looking at how they can get some cash flows coming in there. People have opened their mind into exports. Companies that have never earlier sort of thought of, can we export or do we explore that area? People have now started to look at, okay, even on a small scale, can I start exploring a bit? Then you look at other areas like, getting into tea, getting into agri, as I mentioned, and also import substitution. I mean, there is a huge opportunity for businessmen in Sri Lanka or companies to look at, all those avenues that imports have been curtailed and to see how local manufacturing and import substitution can be used as opportunities so that Sri Lanka gets out of this, mess of trying to import everything and not being able to produce things locally. So we have seen a big shift in that area, that people are consciously looking at what are the things that cannot be imported now, or where are the imports curtailed, and can we put that into our product range and can we develop. So I have seen, or as a bank, we have seen lots of new thinking, changes, and people actually getting activated in being able to have a longer term plan for both import substitution and local manufacturing.
And what are your predictions for the SME sector and, of course, the banking sector's role to support them, let's say, for the next 6 months?
So I think still cautious, because obviously you can't be overly aggressive. Businesses themselves also, cannot really venture out in a big way because the funding costs are still pretty high. But I think it's a time to, like I mentioned, plan really well, see what went wrong earlier, where are some of the areas you can sharpen up as a company, and then again to see how you work much more closely with the banks by producing good financials, by making sure that your turnover is banked, the cash is put into the bank so that it's easy for us to understand, and this will help then as gradually the interest rates coming down for us to support them much more and really get them to now boom and really support the economy. And the other part is, I think, in addition to bank funding, these companies also should be now looking at other sources of funding, and it could be equity infusion. We don't have a huge venture capital sort of base here, or venture capitalists investing, but you now do find individuals who want to sort of pump in some equity into certain businesses. There are foreign parties also keen to take positions in certain companies. So this allows again, for companies to look at other funding sources rather than bank funding only. And from a bank point of view, we are now again hopeful that the funding agencies will look at lots of low-cost lines to support the various businesses. That was also kind of on hold until the whole IMF, the DDO or the DDR is put out and sorted. And then you will see a lot of the funding agencies also supporting the agri sector, the tourism sector, and different areas of that nature with supportable funding. So we are looking forward to playing a big part in getting some of those funding lines and supporting all our customers with good funding sources.
Sanjay, my next question to you revolves around LMD's campaign, Refresh Sri Lanka, which we launched to really encourage and create a more civic-minded society. Now, when we look at uplifting SMEs, like you said, helping them boom and really contribute to Sri Lanka's economy, how can we ensure that civic-mindedness is not ignored?
Yeah, so I think, as I mentioned, a lot of the things that companies now start to look at or embrace should be the changes that are happening in the market. I mean, I mentioned some of them: financial discipline, looking at ERP systems, better managing your company, giving even the staff, much more sort of developed roles they can play, some of the mundane roles to be automated, digitized, so the systems being able to take care of their requirements. Companies itself, when you talk about from micro again to SMEs, looking at, their own savings, so at the moment you start earning a little bit of money, how do you now build a sort of a savings base for your own self so that, you can go through situations of this nature in the future, not sort of taking every penny that you earn and either putting it, completely back into the business, or for that matter, taking it out of the business for various other things. Really being disciplined in terms of how you run your company, be it small or big, the importance of financial discipline, the importance of planning, the understanding of, how a company runs, because it's not like individual. We get a salary, it's very straightforward. You get your salary, you know what your expenses are, and you operate within a framework. But for a company, it's so much more important to understand the economy, the environment, the competition, funding, the long-term nature of what can happen, changes that are happening in the environment. So all these are important factors for anybody who starts from a small micro business to SME to understand and to be aware of, and then take different measures to make sure that as the company grows, as they develop, that they look at the important parts of this area also. Otherwise, sometimes you think, okay, I'm doing my business, it may be only with cash. I don't need to have proper accounting system. I don't need to have a system to integrate my HR, my manufacturing, my procurement. So these are things that people need to now in the future look at as almost like a compulsory thing, because then we are taking the journey of moving from small to big, in terms of operating. And even if you take a microfinance customer, if you are managing 90% of your operation in cash and not having that discipline to show the bank your financials, showing him, how the bank can support in future, by showing those numbers, those changes need to happen. And another area is that we've noticed in the past when companies are doing well, they venture into different areas. So I'm doing extremely well in, say, tea, or maybe in seafood, exports. And suddenly I decide, okay, maybe because tourism is flourishing, I go and put a boutique hotel. But it's not aligned whatsoever to my main focus and my area of business. So that completely takes away, your focus, and then you don't have the expertise in that area. You just kind of ventured into it. So these are strategic direction changes that companies need to make, that you're focused on your area, you become expert in that area, and you really upskill and upgrade both your staff and your company, in terms of working with solutions that are now available for companies to operate.
Sanjay, we're almost at the close of our conversation, but before we let you go, any closing thoughts you'd like to share with our audience today?
Yeah, so I think, as a country, for us to, really be a booming economy, for us to get out of this mess, we need all the businesses possible, be it micro, SME, venturing out, because, the more people we have, going out there, starting to get in as a small business, looking at those opportunities that I mentioned is very important. And the mindset change is where we need to think as a country that importing is not the way forward. Manufacturing, exports, and we have everything if you look at it. The resources that our country offers is huge. If we make use of all the opportunities of everything we have, and we, put our minds to it, and really, take charge of the direction of this country as individuals and as businesses, this will really support us to take this country forward. Rather than waiting for, politicians or, for others to support, if we can look at the opportunity that is in front of us, look at the export opportunity, look at the local manufacturing opportunity, look at the, rich resources that we have in our country. It could be tourism, it could be tea, it could be agri, it could be garments. We have everything that is possible in terms of us being able to, do a lot of things within Sri Lanka, and then also be a real strong partner in exports. We have to compare ourselves to, the Indias, the Bangladesh, the Thailands, the Vietnams, and see what is it that they are doing differently, what are the opportunities we have, and really focus on those areas, because this is the future that we can craft out for all Sri Lankans and for the future generations, because this is the time we have to act, and this is the time we have to get it right.
We've been talking to the Deputy General Manager of Retail and SME Banking at HNB, Sanjay Wijemanne. It was very nice having you on the show.
Thank you. Lovely talking to you, and hopefully we'll meet again soon.
And to all our viewers, thank you so much for joining us. Until next time, take care.
Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Thank you for watching and stay safe.